All right. As always, we'll be recording the meeting. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down because I can't listen to myself. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Is that better? Wow, interesting. All right, we're on to our meeting agenda real quick. Same as always, we're going to social, bell ringing, whatnot, so y'all can stand. We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. That's because we got this going, so that you can hear the people that are speaking that are a little bit softer voice like the last 3 meetings. All right, Bob Crothers, can you stand up? We're doing Pledge of Allegiance. All right, Bob, hit it. Pledge allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Remain standing real quick. We'll do the 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do first. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And all right, y'all can sit. I've got Beth Kroger coming up to do a Rotary Minute for us today.
Hey, everybody. So Rotary has been working to eradicate polio for over 35 years, and our goal of ridding the earth of this disease is in sight. We started in 1979 with vaccinations for 6 million children in the Philippines, and today, Afghanistan and Pakistan are the only countries where polio remains endemic. In 1988, when Rotary and its partners founded the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, the paralyzing disease that affected 350,000 children. Our collaboration with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and later the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, local health workers, and national governments has helped reduce that number by 99.9%. So this year, Rotary's World Polio Day is October 24th. And at that meeting, they'll announce, and it's not like breaking news because it's already on their website, you know, that Africa is completely clear. So today I'd like you to meet Jim Ferguson of the Rotary Club of Bluefield, West Virginia. Here's his story as about polio. My mother was in her 30s when she contracted polio. I don't remember her having the disease, but I do remember her coming home with a cast on her left foot after she'd had a corrective surgery. I was about 4 years old, and I remember her getting out the drill to make holes in the leg of a kitchen chair so she could screw casters into it. She sat in it and rolled herself around our kitchen while she cooked, rather than hobble on her crutch. The surgeon had put a plate in her foot in an attempt to straighten it, but it didn't work and it left her in pain. Doctors wanted to amputate, but she refused. These were the days before the Americans with Disabilities Act. Nothing was accessible. She would struggle on one crutch up and down the stairs to our apartment, down the street to the store, up the steps to get on public transportation. I only saw her ask for help if she really needed it. I really don't know how she managed to raise 9 of us children. Before she got polio, she was raising my older siblings during the Great Depression and while my father was away fighting in World War II. We all grew up here in Bluefield, West Virginia. In the 1950s, people were afraid of polio and the atomic bomb. A nearby town, Wyethville, had more cases of polio per capita than any other place in the country. People would keep their windows closed and hold their breath just to drive through Wyethville. Everyone was terrified because they didn't understand how the virus was being transmitted. City workers sprayed insecticide all over the trees and houses in case insects carried polio. All public places were closed. Movie theaters, pools, kids were quarantined at home. There is still a museum in Wyethville that documents its polio epidemic. It's okay, only 4 more pages. I joined Rotary when I found out about their work to eradicate polio because I thought it would be a way to make my mother proud. She died of lung cancer at age 56, though she never smoked. I was never interested in networking. I joined Rotary to help immunize children against polio. And in 2011, I traveled to India to do that. We went to a little town between the Ganges River and Nepal where we immunized about 45 children who had been missed by previous vaccination campaigns. While there, I met a 16-year-old girl who had crawled her entire life because of polio. She was getting fit for leg braces so she could take her first steps at age 16. I still get emotional about thinking about her. After that trip, I became an advocate for Polio Plus. I gave presentations across our district, raised money, and served as our district's Polio Plus chair. I didn't have any of these aspirations when I joined, but I can be very driven like my mother. Even though polio left her physically damaged, it never took her spirit. So I'm just bringing you this Rotary Minute to remind you of one of the founding important things about our Rotary International is polio eradication, and to start considering perhaps happy dollars in October for Polio Plus.
Thank you, Beth. All right, well, that was a great Rotary Minute. Right now is the time in the meeting where we introduce guests. I didn't see any other than our speaker today, so we might be free from this section. All right, no one, great. So up next, Bob Gronig's got a quick update on peach sales, our big fundraiser of the year, which just ended, and Bob's probably thanking goodness for it, so.
Money is still dribbling in. Those of you who still have money, you can give it to me today, or if you come in next. Terry, are you going to be here next week? I will not be here next week, so just give it to Terry when you get everything calculated up. We ordered 1,000 boxes of peaches, which is probably about 50 more than we did last year. We've sold all but maybe 1.5 boxes. Is that what's left at Meals on Wheels? So we're not giving any away this year like we've done in the past. Everything was sold, and I've had people asking for more. So we did a great job to get that done. We also have some jam and vinegar left if somebody wants to buy some. Otherwise, in the case of the jam, I know he can take back. I don't know about the vinegar. But the vinegar is really good to put on things if you haven't tried it yet. So we did a fine job. I want to thank everybody that participated on certainly Saturday when they offloaded 1,000 boxes of peaches. It looked a little imposing, but we got them out of there in a pretty good amount of time. Those that worked out at the offsites at Arapahoe and 119th, and certainly at the medical center at Lowell and Baseline, did a fine job. We probably could have sold a few more if we'd have had them, but you don't want to push it. So all told, when all the money comes in, I'm guessing we're going to be something in excess of $15,000 to the positive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. And I pulled up a couple numbers. We did about 7,500 on the website, and we only put that up just a few weeks before the sales started. So, or the in-person started. So next year, hopefully we'll be able to use that metric also to see those numbers go higher. All right, club announcements, similar as previous weeks, and since almost everyone here has been here recently, I will go through those a little bit quicker. But yeah, email Joe for community service if you're interested in participating, and refer back to your email if you want to sign up for Habitat. Joe, do we have a number of spots open still? Oh, you got Beth Kroger. Awesome.
I did the Chase House, and so I ordered food and had it delivered, and that's an option, so that I know Beth has done it several times, and I've done it a couple of times, but other people can do that. You don't need to actually take food. You could order it and have it delivered.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. So if you have time to come to those, please sign up now. Grants committee, Beth had some updates she wanted to do real quick, so I'll have her hop up and present those to the club.
So our first grants committee meeting is tomorrow morning. We have a great group of people. Jay is, forcing his way onto the committee as the president. But other than that, we have Herb, Bob Crothers, Lou Miller, Ann Feist, Angie Layton, Amy Long, Dave Turner. So we've got like 10 people on the committee, which is great. And we have a few applications in, but what I wanted to say is please, as Rotary members, think about getting out to those nonprofits that we haven't helped before. It would be great to see some diversity in terms of who we're giving our money to. We don't give, we have about $20,000 this year to give, and that can make $1,000 can make a lot of difference for a small startup nonprofit and not so much for the established ones. So I encourage you to get out there and help us get to more organizations.
Yeah, so if you want to join the committee, it's growing, but there's always room for more help. So feel free to reach out to Beth and she will add you to the Zoom invite if you're not already on it. There we go. Oh, so literacy award, we got 5 in. Okay, 5 applications in. And then with that committee, it has it now in their ballpark. There's no more applications coming in. So if you had someone in mind, unfortunately, it's past the deadline. Greenhouse Scholars, we have the Venus to Miles bike ride. Everyone has been hearing about that already. So if you have the ability to volunteer, you want to do the ride, again, doing the ride requires either being female identifying, or if you're choosing to be male identifying, you have to wear a dress. So yeah, well, or drag, you're right, yeah. So feel free to sign up for that. We'll have a few members participating in that event. From the foundation for Rusty back there, there's a board meeting today right after this meeting at 8:30. So if you're interested, even if you're not a voting member, you can participate by sitting, listening, and asking questions if you have any. And Rusty will be leading that meeting directly after this one. Oh, he says no questions, but you ask your questions. All right, district announcements. We'll keep that quick too. These are all duplicates from past, but we do have more fire relief work happening in Grand Lake. We still have the Woo Humanity bike ride. If you have a bike or you want to go volunteer, they're looking for help. The Rockies game for Polio Plus is on the 26th. I've got a bunch of tickets, and I encourage anyone else interested in going. Anyone else buy tickets yet to go? We got Joe, awesome. Well, hopefully I'll see Joe there. I guess all of you are going to miss out on those hot dogs. I'm sorry. And then the last thing is the International Convention in Houston. So they are taking people to sign up for going to that. All right. This is when we do Happy Bucks. So for those who are not familiar, Happy Bucks is a time in which people can donate a little bit of money towards this cause, which is GA 2030. It's a water filtration organization. In this case, one of our members is really involved in it as a founder, but we say a little something for the good of the club or a little bit about your life as an update. So I'll be passing mics around in cups. So Terri wants to go first.
I want to go first and you're not going anywhere. My happy bucks, $10 is, I can't do it both. Presenting our dear president with his Paul Harris +2 pin. I didn't know how to fit this in. So I left my cell phone in the car for the script, but with the Paul Harris Paul 2, we certainly thank you for giving to the International Rotary Foundation. And you get 2 sapphires on your Paul Harris pen. So for every $1,000 you give to the International Rotary Foundation, you're recognized with the pin, but it's also going toward what we can draw on in the future from district funds. So the money that we give then comes back to us and the district. So that really helps with our grant giving as well. So thank you, Jay. Mr. President, I know you usually present the Paul Harris pins. But so I thought I'd surprise you.
Thanks, Terri. All right.
Every year we say the same thing, but this is for the best peaches ever.
And my dollar is because I tried paddle boarding and I did not wipe out.
Unlike my dear friend, I did try paddleboarding at the family reunion in Oxford, Maryland. Nani is as black and blue. There's hardly a part of me that isn't, but I had to try it. I thought I'm not getting any younger. So that was good for you. It's hard. It's super, super hard. But we had a wonderful family reunion, all 15 of us, and it was just so much fun. So, anybody else?
You? Oh, we got a few. There we go.
Got $178 for GA for Happy Dollars, Rogers organization that was collected at the peach sales. So $178 was contributed for that.
August 30th, my son will have his kidney transplant.
I'm leaving Sunday for 5 days in upstate New York to play golf.
I just like clean water.
Anyone at this table? Just a beautiful day. Thank you. All right, Marty.
Months ago, before I knew the peach sales were going to be last Saturday, I signed up for another half marathon race. And so thanks to Warren Height for picking up our orders that morning. But I did, at my advanced age, complete another half marathon race. And so I'm very thankful for that.
This is a happy buck because I got email from John Stringfellow, who's visited this club a couple of times. He said that the people in this club and the communication we have given him has been the most welcome experience he's ever had. So keep up the good work. Our outreach is ongoing, and I think he is going to come back for the 3rd time next week, and he is going to become our next new member.
Thanks, Bob. All right.
Happy bucks, a thanks to Bob for all of his hard work. And then sad because both my kids are going to college this week. My son drove up to Fort Collins in his 1997 Mazda Miata, his new car with his bike strapped to the back. And I moved Lydia into a dorm at CU today.
This is for a wedding anniversary last Thursday, our 66th.
So I have a happy five for the Zoom happy dollars that so I'm putting it in here. And I also wanted to tell you that if you look at the Boulder Flatirons Rotary Facebook, even if you don't, if you have a Facebook account, you could still do this because I hate Facebook. But for the good of our organization, it's letting everybody see what we're doing. So yesterday, Kim sent me a photo of Brandon McMahon, who served in Afghanistan. And there's a photo of him and his remarks about what's going on in Afghanistan now. So it's a really fabulous picture of him, and it does mark his feelings. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. That was quite a happy day. And oh, Bob, another.
I just remembered one thing. I got a phone call yesterday from a lady who said she was 84 years old. She had just come from Meals on Wheels. Somebody had given her a peach. She and her husband, when her husband was alive, used to buy 2 boxes of peaches. And a couple of years ago, when he passed away, she got away from that. She just wanted me to know that she was very thankful that we were still doing the peaches, and that hopefully we were helping a lot of people. And please put her on the list for next year because she wanted to buy some.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for the happy bucks. We'll be getting a count on those for our running total for the month. With that said, if I could have the introduce for our gracious guest speaker today. Thank you, Beth.
Hello, everybody. So I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Terri Feiz, who is CU Boulder's Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. Terri is responsible for overseeing the $600 million research enterprise at CU Boulder. The Research and Innovation Office includes venture partners at CU Boulder, the Office of Industry Collaboration, and the coordination of the Cross-Campus Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative. Terri is passionate about building partnerships with industry, the startup community, and federal labs to build a strong ecosystem for the state and nation. As an electrical engineer, her research focuses on analog integrated circuits. In 2008, she co-founded a solar electronics startup company. She was bitten by the startup bug and hopes to seed entrepreneurial experiences for student and faculty, connecting them to everything that the vibrant Boulder has a bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Idaho and a PhD from Oregon State University. And I am thrilled to have Terri as a colleague.
this in a community like this, and all of the riches that we have is pretty phenomenal. So the topic of my talk is really becoming the innovation university. So, so first of all, I don't think some people realize globally, University of Colorado Boulder in the whole world is ranked 46th. And that's pretty phenomenal. That's universities all around the world. And so how do we get that kind of ranking? And a lot of it has to do with, again, all of the riches in this community. And I'll talk about that more and then highlight some of the projects that are pretty amazing. So first of all, what is CU Boulder's vision? And the vision is to be a leader in addressing the humanitarian, social, and technological challenges of the 21st century. Okay, well, that says a lot. We'll have to figure out what that means. But I think the things that have really been our guiding compass is really thinking about lead, innovate, and create impact. So creating the leaders of the future through our programs that our students go through, really having a whole ethos of innovation across campus for our students, among our faculty, staff, and thinking about the research and how do we grow the impact, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I like to talk about, after I got here, it took me about a year to sort of figure out all the things that are happening here, and then came up with this trifecta that is here. Go ahead and click one. So first of all, and you know this, we have an amazing startup community. And I think a lot of that started in the 80s and has grown up pretty substantially. And that startup community brings a mindset of being entrepreneurial, but really being creative and having a growth mindset. You can do things. The other thing that I learned in my own startup experience is startup is really about networking. It's like connecting with people to figure out how you're going to make this successful. The second thing is we have these large companies, and all of this is in very, very close proximity. And so these three things that I'm going to talk about, this is unique to Boulder. There aren't very many places in the country that have this kind of setup. So the corporate partners, the focus there is to solve and commercialize solutions for society. So it's, they're turning the crank to solve these problems. Next one. And then finally, the federal labs. So we always talk about the federal labs in Colorado. There's something like 31 federal labs. Of those, about half are right here in Boulder. And that really is research tied to the national agenda. So that's where we get, we have so many PhDs per capita in Boulder because of these federal labs that are also doing something really important for this country. So if you take those three things, I can't think of too many places in the country that have all of that in that close proximity, and that brings a richness. So when I think about what do students who come to University of Colorado Boulder get, they get to be in a community like this. And I was doing a talk one time talking about this, and this one graduate was saying, wait a second, I did an internship at a federal lab. I worked in a startup and did my own startup. And then I also worked at a large corporation, Google, while I was here. And it's like, okay, you got the whole meal deal here. So good for you. Next slide. So why are we talking about being the innovation? Why is Innovation University, why is this important? Well, so first of all, and it was interesting because I gave this talk about 2 years ago, before COVID. So it's kind of interesting looking at it now because we've been talking about the changes that are happening and the changes that are affecting universities. So when we look at these changes, universities who aren't going to be adaptive are not going to survive. Well, COVID really taught us that one in spades. And so we really have to reimagine what is the role of the university and how do we help our students to be successful, especially in these new days. We've got a lot of disruptive shifts. COVID was one of them. But the students coming in are very different than they were 20 years ago. So then, I think institutions tend to get caught in how they do things. How do we adapt to how these students learn? They learn very differently. They started in, I don't know, did you said you're dropping your daughter off. Did she start like as a toddler working with computing devices, phones.
They were in the house, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so she'd always lived with this, you know, a parent looking at a screen.
Yeah. And probably knew what to do, help you more than you could help yourself, right? So I think we've got a real change there. We have to adapt. And then also on the research side, it's more important than ever that we really have this relevance. How are we going to take the research we're doing and have it solve some real problems? So some of the drivers, and these are kind of general trends that people talk about. Globalization. I was thinking about globalization because before COVID, you know, it's like, oh, the world's flat. The world's flat differently now, not because everybody's traveling, because everybody's Zooming all around the world. So you had to figure out time zones and all of that. But that's really changed us, you know, as an educational institution too. The computation and automation we take for granted. You know, when I get in the car now, it says, oh, you've got 18 minutes to campus. It knows where I'm going. My phone's telling me what's happening. I don't know if you remember, that didn't happen 10 years ago, right? So there's this automation that's like built into our lives, in our cars. Your cars sense all kinds of things. How many cameras are in cars now? And so the amount of intelligence, I still hit some things, even though I have a whole camera. New media. Well, I mean, I actually think we'd probably be better off without some of the media, but you know, that's a big part of our lives. Networked organization. So, you know, if you think back 20 years ago, we think of organizations being very hierarchical, right? You have the CEO, you have people. There's a protocol of how you do things in organizations like that. Today, with things being networked, you know, in the university, a student will email the chancellor, right? And basically feels like that's completely appropriate to do. And maybe it is, right? But this whole idea that you have some hierarchy and you need to go through that, these students don't have any way, they don't think that way at all. Everything is networked. Everything is something that you can get to. And people are living longer. So lifelong learning has become more and more important. So there's some key things here. Entrepreneurial and growth mindsets. Do you know what a growth mindset is? Has everyone heard that term before? Yeah, a growth mindset is, you know, I think of it is being willing to fail. So if individuals, you know, I think about this, I learned about this when my kids were younger, and it's like, were they willing to try and fail? Or did they try something and say, I can't do that, I can't do math, so I'm not gonna do math. A growth mindset says, I just gotta work harder because it didn't come to me right away, right? So it's really important to have that growth mindset. Doesn't matter what age you are, all of us need that growth mindset. And then design and computational thinking. We work with computers. I did a survey at Oregon State when I was there to look at how many people had actually had some kind of computational class. And interestingly enough, we weren't giving our students very much of it, but the generation that were department chairs had all had it. So now we have a supercomputer basically in everybody's hand, and we aren't doing as much of that computational training, which is interesting. And then this whole idea of a polymath curriculum. So what this is the students coming in, they actually don't have these really siloed boundaries of what they want to do. So I was talking to a student and she said, well, what I want to do is I want to study film studies and chemical engineering. And I said, absolutely do that. Because these students are going to create whole new areas that we don't know exist. And so these traditional, I'm going to do one discipline, I'm going to graduate with that just doesn't work with this generation. Okay, so now what? You know, I already talked about a little bit about having an entrepreneurial mindset. What could be? How could we make it be that? So, you know, how do we do this on campus? Every student will have an entrepreneurial experience. And that can be as small as, I always think of education being about planting seeds. So you're gonna plant seeds, they're gonna have maybe one little experience. And that experience 10 years from now may come back to them and say, you know, I went to this one seminar where I saw a founder of a company talk, and it was so interesting. I think I could do something with this idea I have. So that's kind of the idea of how do we plant seeds in the university. I mean, that's what education is all about. So at CU Boulder, we have created a pretty big enterprise. So one of the things I did about a year after I got here is we created the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative. And what it was we had different places on campus that were doing really good things to expose students, but it wasn't coordinated and it wasn't accessible to all students on campus. And so what we did is we pulled all of that together and coordinated all of that and then built on it. So we started looking at what are we missing. So we have a number of innovation entrepreneurship co-curricular experiences. So what that means is it's just a seminar they can go to learn about how do you create a pitch, or they can meet with some of the founders in Boulder, or they can do a whole, learn how to use the makerspace in engineering, and they might be a student in music. So they really get access to all of that. So there's a number of places on campus, and then we've created a lot of programs. Anytime you get a professor, this is going to be 50 minutes, so I should have warned you. So the other thing is, as I sit back and think about how do you transform a university, and we always think about, okay, there's faculty teaching classes, but there are 4 staff for every faculty member on campus. And so I really think our staff are a big part of how do you transform a university? How do we give empowerment to our staff to be more entrepreneurial, to come up with ideas? I'll tell you a little story. When I first became a department chair, which was too many years ago now, I was at Oregon State University, and every day I'd come in and they'd say, oh, we have this problem, and I'd start brainstorming, and they would start convulsing because it's like, oh my gosh, she wants to change something, right? And the person who probably reacted the most to that, a year later, she came into my office and she said, we have this one problem, and I have a few ideas of how we can address it. And it's like, we've arrived. Right? So this whole idea of getting people to be thinking about, they're empowered to come up with solutions. And that applies to all of our staff on campus. And then faculty. Well, I think this is where it's a new day. Our new faculty come in and they're very entrepreneurial thinking. They do it very differently than faculty from 20 or 30 years ago. They are thinking they're going to come in, they're going to work with students in a different way. They're thinking about how do they take whatever they're developing and get it out of the university. So that's really exciting. And so I like to show this curve of kind of the research and innovation. And there's a broad span here from exploration to discovery, to design and demonstration, to invention, to commercialization. And that dip down there I've shown as the valley of death. Have you heard that term before? In this context. Yeah, good. And the reason we talk about this being the valley of death is a lot of times there are inventions in the universities, and it's hard to get them out of the university so they have impact. And part of the challenge is the funding. So there's federal funding for a lot of this early part. This kind of shows like our faculty have been very successful at getting funding. But when you get to this commercialization piece where you've got an invention, you want to take it the next step, that's where it's become challenging. We're addressing that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I wanted to highlight a couple different pretty exciting projects. Sometimes I just pinch myself because I'm just amazed at what is happening on our campus. And so, first of all, let me talk about the National Solar Observatory, the Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope. So this is in Hawaii. Are you familiar with this? Does anybody see it? Okay. I've been up there. I was getting a little bit sick because it's pretty high up. I'm not very good at elevation, so it's hard in Colorado. But basically, the National Solar Observatory is on the CU campus. So the people that are coordinating this and doing all of this are CU Boulder employees and researchers. And I'm actually on the board for that. So we meet twice a year to look at the progress of this construction. It's happened over about a 7-year period. They had first light last February. I'm trying to remember if it's a year and a half ago now. Time is really confusing. confusing with COVID. But super exciting, you know, the largest solar telescope, and it's to look at the sun. This is work that's happening in Boulder. The other one I wanted to highlight is, so, you know, we're looking into space at the sun. Well, we also were one of the co-leads of Mosaic, which is the largest polar expedition in history. So the last expedition that happened like this was in the early 1900s. And this was the second one. It was conceived by a researcher in series. And they worked with, in Germany, it's the German institute that has the polar stern. So this was the ship they were on. Throughout this period of time, they'd fly people in to be on the ship, and then other people would come on. So that people would be on for about a month. It was almost a full year trip. Pretty amazing. I actually think these people are a little crazy, because the way it works is they would get on the ship started out, and then it would find some ice. And then it would be, you know, ingrained into the ice, and it would float with the ice through the whole journey. And so this was a phenomenal one. And again, our researchers, we had quite a few Sea Boulder researchers that were part of this. They were looking down into the ocean and trying to understand what was happening there, but also flying drones up into the air. And, you know, they talked about having to worry about polar bears, and, you know, it was dark most all the time. So a really interesting project. Next one. And then exploration of our world, the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics, LASP as it's known, most recently July a year ago, launched a vehicle to Mars, and this was in collaboration with UAE, the country. So they had UAE scientists working with the CU scientists. UAE didn't have any background. They wanted to basically expand their economy and really push science in their economy. So that was part of this project. In February, they had a Mars insertion, so it was completely successful. You have to think about this. When I first got here and I said, wait, they're doing a mission to Mars out of a university? That's crazy. And you know, it's not a simple thing. Just think about, okay, it had to be shipped to Japan for the launch site. So we're shipping something that has export controls to Japan, and there's all of these federal rules about all of this. So it's pretty miraculous, and so far it's gone off perfectly. So another example of pretty phenomenal projects. And I should also mention, in all of these, there are all kinds of students working on these projects. And so students are having amazing experiences as part of being in school. So I'm going to go to discovery. Next slide. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of our Nobel Prize kind of work. So one of the areas that we're really, really strong in is RNA. And our institute, which is called BioFrontiers, has a real expertise here. They have been so invaluable during COVID. They developed some of the researchers there developed a unique test for COVID. That's what we used on campus. It was more of an immediate kind of test. But Tom Check is known for the work that he did in RNA, and he's a Nobel Prize winner in BioFrontiers. That's helped us to attract other faculty that are really strong and world class. And then Beth wouldn't let me forget this. So Jilla has a number of Nobel Prizes, and really the key technologies here have to do with high accuracy timing and clocking. And Jilla has the most accurate clock. You walk in the door, you can see it, the timing going. So why is timing important? Do you have any idea? GPS is one, right? So we synced up all kinds of things with GPS now. 10 years ago, people wouldn't have even known probably what that was. You know, another thing, if you think about trading, on Wall Street trading, like the timing on that it's gotten down to the precision of that can affect how much money was won or lost, let's call it that. So very important technologies there, and also again, really top-notch researchers, graduate students, undergraduates working into it. I thought I'd capture a couple other examples. I'm always running into people on campus that just blow my mind. So we have a group of faculty in our Institute for Cognitive Science and our Institute for Behavioral Science that study the effects of cannabis. Now this is challenging. I like to tell this story because it's not federally legal, marijuana, how do you study it? We would put all of our research funding at risk if we do this and don't follow the rules. So they came up with a really good way to study what are some of the effects. And what they did is they bought a canavan. And the canavan actually goes to someone's house. And they go into their house and they said, go buy this material and do this. They take their vitals beforehand, they take their vitals after, and then they can monitor people. They don't have to come on campus and into a research lab. So I think people have had to be creative. So even though we've made it legal in our states, we really haven't supported that with the infrastructure on research. I think it's really important. We're going to legalize these things that we understand what the effects are. So that's an example one. And then we have a whole group of researchers that look at pain and sleep and the gut-brain connection. And super phenomenal and really interesting. I'll talk about a pain solution in a minute. We have the National So Nice Data Center in our Cooperative Institute for Research and Environmental Sciences. And they basically publish every year what the depth of the ice is. And that's the worldwide measure of where are we in terms of the depth of the ice. So pretty phenomenal. And then we have a group of social scientists that have now partnered up with a lot of our engineers and scientists at the Natural Hazard Center. So it's really looking at when we have a natural hazard, we seem to be having more of those, whether it's fires, it's floods, COVID's a natural, I guess it's natural. But basically looking at the social effects of that as well as, technologically, how do we address that? Did want to point out a couple things. One of the things that we have a very diverse portfolio. So I've talked a lot about science and technology and all of that. But another interesting project is really the Boulder County Latino history. And I always think about when I was a kid, it's like there were no women in history. And I would think if you were a minority, you'd be thinking, oh, there were no minorities in history. So I think we need to have more of that. And then in terms of teachers, here's an interesting statistic. 21% of teachers in high minority districts are uncertified in Colorado versus 3.6% nationally. So our School of Education is trying to address that and help address that. Another exciting development here is we recently won an AI institute, Artificial Intelligence Institute, that's around tutoring and helping augment teachers in the classroom. And so that's really bringing our computer scientists, our social scientists, and our educators together to address this. So I wanted to highlight a couple inventions that are getting out of the university that we're excited about. So the first one, Darwin Social Biosciences. They competed 2 years ago in our New Venture Challenge, which is our place where they can come and compete for funding for their startup. And basically the idea is it's a saliva test to measure if you have flu or you're sick. Well, this was way before COVID. So at the time it was like, well, this is really interesting. I could see how the Army could use this. They basically pivoted during COVID and started doing this testing for COVID where it was more immediate. At that point in time, nobody had anything like that. So they're off to a great start. And then Zabu, this one. This is one of our researchers in psychology. But basically, it's a pain treatment. She has a great video on her site where it shows a dog that couldn't even walk, and they applied this pain treatment basically was running around. And so, so pretty phenomenal. They've spun that company out. I think they're around Series B or C funding. And, you know, I guess what we're all waiting for is when does it get to humans? So it will get to humans eventually, but it's a lot easier to do. You can move it a lot faster through the animal side of things. So just a couple other to highlight. Solid Power is a spin-out company that is in Louisville. This is some mechanical engineering faculty, but it really addresses, you know, we're going to be going to battery-powered cars, whether we are now or not, but we will be. And their technology is being backed by the biggest car company. So I think it's very, very promising in their scaling. And then another company I wanted to mention was Colt Quanta. Colt Quanta has been a company that spun out a number of years ago out of JILA, out of Beth's organization. And now is really making a big splash because it's really gotten to a point in history where we can take that technology and have it have real impact. And then I wanted to mention one of our newest institutes is the Renee Crown Wellness Institute. So it's really looking at children throughout their life and how do we ensure that they have a healthy, you know, mental support throughout their lives. So, you know, as I think about all of this, you know, there's so much breadth here. It's really the combination of the community and the university that makes this richness happen. So, you know, I hope I kind of inspired you about how exciting it really is. And I started a podcast, so if you want to highlight some of our really impressive researchers. Now, the podcast is a little different because I think some people would think it's going to be all about the technology and what people have done. I modeled this after what my parents would do. So my dad would go sit, he was a department chair of education. When he got home, he'd go sit out in the front of the garage and people walked by and he'd say, come on over, let's have a Coke. And by the way, where did you grow up? And what have you done in your life? And all of that. And my mom would go to the grocery store. She had 5 kids. So she'd go there and 2 hours later come back with 2 gallons of milk because she talked to everybody in town at the grocery store, right? So the podcast, it's only about 20 minutes. And it's really about some of these researchers and their life path. And where did they grow? Where were they born? Where did they grow up? How did they find the direction that they have? And their success, and what do they think about the future? And so it's called the Buff Innovator Insights, if you have any interest. And like I said, each one's only about 20 minutes. I should have been on the page, but I forgot. So I will stop there, and probably went a little longer than I wanted to, but any questions or comments? Yeah.
As a former industrial engineer, professional industrial engineer, the thing that hit me was that you've got 4 staff for every instructor and above.
Yeah, think of the custodians. Think of, there are so many people to make a university work. It's not just the person in the classroom.
Okay, and it's not just the technicians that work under the.
Oh, no, not at, that would be nice. I'm sure a lot of people would like that. No, I mean, you know, think of the finance organization, think of the HR organization, you know, there are a lot of pieces to make a university go.
Answer the question. The other is, you are so big and growing. I hate to use a disease as a comparison, but boy, it's getting big.
Oh, see Boulder?
The university and all the things you're doing.
Yes and no. So actually the number of students has not grown very much in the last 10 years. But I think what we've seen is that being at the place we are in the middle of the country and being one of the top research universities in the whole country, we have kind of an imperative to really help float up the boat. So I think of our role as we need to think about all these surrounding states and how do we help lift them up too. So there's been expansion in terms of our research enterprise, but I think we have a national imperative to really help support this country to be competitive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm a professor and I got this great idea and I'm gonna come up with this invention. How does a university share it, or what percentage does the university get back from letting the resources?
Yeah, so the question is, if you're a professor or graduate student with a professor, you may have an invention, how is that shared? To a first order, it's about a third, a third, a third. So a third goes to the researcher, a third goes to the department or the university overall, and then a third goes to our tech transfer office, which helps. We have all kinds of training now because most faculty don't know what to do once that happens. So now we have 300 volunteers from our community that help mentor this. We have training they go through that really helps them understand it. I think it's changed for me, having that full experience myself of doing a startup, getting Silicon Valley funding and all of that. I learned a lot. It changed my view of what my role as a professor was. Yeah. I'm trying, I don't have the exact numbers, but let's say 10% over the last 5 years is the growth in freshmen. Well, a percentage of those graduate. So one of the big metrics that we look at is our graduation in 6 years. Everybody at university does. We have put a huge focus on this and really focused on the student experience. So I'm teaching a what's called a first year experience class with 19 students. And mainly it's to have them connect to the university and feel connected. So I think there's just so much more emphasis on that. I think it's great. I don't know if that there was as much emphasis on that when I first got here. It's a big focus, which is fantastic.
I know we've run out of time. I just want to give you just a very special thank you for this outstanding presentation. And thank you.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Before you head out, we have a token of our appreciation.
Oh, wow.
Talking globalization around the whole world in your hand. And hopefully as a paperweight at your office, maybe you'll be able to think about Rotary.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, well, with that, our meeting is adjourned. So if it's Wednesday, it's Rotary. Thank you.